So this is the agenda that we'll be talking about, and this particular webinar would be highlighting all these spatial features. I'll be briefing you about the math revolution, what we are, where did we start from, and how are we doing today. And then I'll be talking about the GMAT math overview, which most of you or every one of you would be very well aware about. Then I'll be introducing the world's first variable approach to solve the DS problem. It's actually not solving the DS problem, but getting to know the answers before we start solving it. And then I have one question to every attendees today, that how is the conventional approach versus math revolution approach? Math revolution approach will definitely outweigh the conventional approach, but in what do you think personally about it? So you can definitely share your thoughts. So we started in 2001 in South Korea, and we are already global right now, serving 190 plus countries site visits, and it's more than 130 plus countries members that we have right now who have enrolled, and they're taking various services, be it a tutoring or be it a packages, or the practice questions, the lessons, the question bank, and all of those. This all the consolidated information is very well organized and available on www.mathrevolution.com, so you can definitely check those out. And so far we have like 41,000 students already, and 90% or plus students have got 49 out of 51, which is a target score for any aspirant of a GMAT quant. We launched the Math Revolution, a global website, in the year 2015 in the month of October. And this is wherein we always talk about that your math score goal is not 40, 41, or 45. Definitely it is somewhere above 48. So to range off, it's 49 to 51. That is what we particularly look about, because your GMAT score is consolidated score of math and verbal. And university often looks like 680 plus 700, 710, 720. And when we say such score, we need to understand the possible combination therein where quant always lie above 47. So how to score a 50, 51 in GMAT math is possible by the learning and mastering two approaches. The first one is variable approach for DS. This is something I'll be talking about today. And the second one is IV approach for PS. So Max is a person who is a mastermind behind developing this new approach, which is world's first new approach. He's the founder and CEO of Math Revolution, who has taken GMAT 27 times and have hit the perfect score for math many a times. Almost solved 100,000 plus questions, which itself is a Bible. And yes, so he is the one who analyzed the GMAT, trained the questions, and this is wherein we keep ourselves updated for the students. So if you go along on our website, the question banks and the type of the questions, you'll always find them as per the recent trends. So that's a one-stop solution for all the students for math. The characteristics of Math Revolution, if I have to talk about, I'll say uniqueness and math skills are two major pillars. Why uniqueness? Because it's a world's first approach, and that is a variable approach, or IV approach is the unique approach. And secondly, it is irrelevant to any math skills in the current fashion. So any non-math background or a math background, students can pretty and can really understand that approaches and the pattern, the concepts very easily. So these are the two pillars, and the other tools that we always talk about are quickness and accuracy. So now quickness is all about we have to be very well aware about, because GMAT is a time bounded exam, and as Math Revolution is currently providing the free one-on-one consultation calls, I have been talking to students therein where they have raised a question that they often lack time. So they are left with just 10 minutes in the last, and they still have good 8 to 10 questions to solve. So it's all because of a conventional approach. When you take a long solution route, it becomes very difficult for you to save the time. So variable approach is the one that will save your time, so that you don't have to worry about it. And accuracy, of course, I mean, like if you miss on the question, To answer it correctly, you're hitting onto your marks. And GMAT is a CAT adaptive. So, what are the strategies for the scores of 50, 51? I will agree to the fact that, with a good math skills and conventional approach, there are students who have scored or who will score Q50, 51, but the percentages of those students out of whole would be very, very less, almost negligible. But when we talk about the IV and the variable approach, that percentages increases. So it's only a few students who can score few 50, 51 range through the conventional approach which they have learned or mastered even by the help of the math skills they have developed over the course of month or year. But anyone who is newbie, who wants to understand, be it from a non-math background or struggling with the existing score of 40, 45 maybe, wants to raise the score, three things has to be taken into consideration. First, variable approach to solve a DS question. Second, IV approach to solve a PS question. And third one is your logic, which you develop over the practice and your confidence that comes when you hit a lot of good mock scores. Let's start with the DS. So I welcome everyone and anyone who has missed the initial start of our lecture today can definitely look into the videos once it gets uploaded. So we start with the basic theory of the variable approach, which says answer C or E. So, the name itself says it's a variable approach. So we are looking for the variables indeed. So the question prompt that is given to us, the question stem that is given to us is, or we name it as original condition. And the two statements that support or that is being given as a support to answer the question in data sufficiency or DS, we call them as a condition one and condition two. So these are the jargons that I'll be definitely using in today's webinar. So you need to understand the original condition is our question. The condition number one is our first statement. Condition number two is our second statement. These are the three steps that would be involved into solving a particular question, which you should be uh, very, very be aware about. And the first step that comes into picture is modify and recheck the original condition and question. Now, see, understand, when there happens to be a question based on inequalities, percentages, I would always recommend the students to modify it and recheck. There happens many a times that when you modify the equations and when you modify the variable relationship, it often ends up in getting us the direct statement or a condition one or two. So this is the first step, which is very much important. The second step, which is followed by it, is check the number of variables in the equation that your original question has. So this is something I'll make you more clear when we deal with one of the lot of the questions today. And the third step would be we'll match the number of variables with the number of equations. So the number of variables comes from the original condition, that is questions. Number of equation comes from the statements, condition number one and two, and we try matching them. So how does it go? So the concern is very simple. But before that, I want to tell you this major three principles that without solving a problem, how could you choose the most likely answer? So if you have been just left with 2 minutes to solve a question and you cannot accurately predict, or you don't even know that how much time is left, you choose the most likely answer. So that is the first stage. Secondly, when you have just a 5 minutes deadline and you know that the question cannot be solved in a 5 minutes, choose the most likely answer. If you're thinking to skip the particular question because that particular topic is not well strengthened, I would say rather than skipping it, mark the most likely answer to get it accurate. So don't lose on to your marks. It's starting with the case of answer C. So we'll be covering answer C cases, answer E, answer D, answer A, and answer B today. So starting right away with case of answer C, what happens or how does it look like that where we can mark our answer C? And let me tell you, I'm not asking you to solve the question, but I'm just asking you to mark the answer C. So if your original condition, that is your question has got two variables, then definitely it will require two equations to solve. Now these two equations would come from condition number one, which is the statement one, and condition number two, which is the statement two. So these both equations, now here, two equations are matching the two variables, and hence my original condition plus condition 1 and condition 2 gives me two variables and two equations in total. This is called the matching. So this is the third step that we did right now. The first step was modifying and rechecking if there is possibility. Second step was to get to know the two variables in the original conditions. So therein where we deduce or infer that we require two equations. And then in the third step, we got to know that condition 1 and 2 requires two equations. After matching this, we get to know that our answer would be C because your number of variables are equal to the number of equations. So now let's see a particular question to understand this. At a meeting yesterday, each of the N person donated $100 to help seniors who live alone. And at another meeting held today, each of the M persons donated $200 to help children without parents. What are the value of M and N? When I'm reading this particular question, I get to know that there are two variables involved, which are M and N. Now, to solve this value, M and N, I require two equations which will come from this both question statements 1 and 2. So my answer is C. I haven't started the solution. Neither have asked you to start the solution. So my answer goes as C. Now I'll just tell you that after solving we definitely get to the answer C so that you can gain confidence into it that this particular approach is hitting the right way. Before that, I've got one of the question by Yash, so I would like to answer that. How long does it take to master the two approaches? When you use the word called master, it can take an endless amount of time because there are n number of questions which you can solve. But our major work is not to solve 1,000 or 3,000 questions into the database. Our major question is we want to learn the variable approach in order to be accurate to answer, second, to save the time. So ideally, if you practice it for an hour or two every day for next 3 weeks, you would be able to command on it. So that is my answer. And if you have any more questions like that, you can definitely send me across. Getting back to the questions now, we are dealing with two variables M and N. So let's see what does the question says. We have a two variable, we require a two equation. Now let's see. We need to find the values of M and N. The N persons are donating $100. So total amount would be 100 times N. And M persons are donating $200. So total amount would be 200 times M. So these are the particular notations that we have got. Step 1 is done, modifying and rechecking. Let's go on to the step number 2. We have got two variables M and N, and then we require two equations to solve this particular question. So my answer would be C. Now listen to this thing very carefully. When I know that my answer would be C, I will not fall for checking the individual conditions, because when I know my answer is C, I'll directly combine both the equations 1 and 2 together to solve the question. So you have automatically saved your time now. And when I'm saying that you have to just combine both the equation to solve the question, let's combine those. Condition number 1 says that 100N would be equals to 40,000 because total amount donated yesterday. So yesterday there were N persons who donated $100. So 100N is equals to 40,000. By simple uh, rearranging, you could get N equals to 400. Now, since you have got N equals to 400, you're just looking for value of M. The total amount donated today is 60% of total amount donated over 2 days. So in 2 days, that means we're dealing with M and N both, which is a 60% for total amount donated today, which is M. So 200M is 0.6, which is a 60% of 200M plus 100N. When you get such equations, you know that your N is already 400. So you can substitute the value of N in as 400. So there is only one variable which is left. And after rearranging the particular equation, which is there on the screen right now, we get M equals to 300. So N is 400 and M is 300. After this, the total that we get is 700. That means my both the conditions combined together are sufficient. My answer is C. Now remember what I did just 3 minutes ago. I already marked this answer. So if someone is solving this particular question is still, I'm not the one who is solving this particular question. I've already marked the answer as C and I've already moved to the question number 2 or 3 maybe. So this is wherein I wanted to tell, and I've been telling that you would be saving a lot of your time in applying the variable approach for DS. So getting to it, let's take the another case, the case of answer E. So the steps remain same. This is the beauty. The steps remain same. We have been following 3 steps. So read the question. That is the original condition. Now there are 3 variables. Fine. If there are 3 variables, then we require 3 equations. Now condition number 1 and condition number 2 will give me 1 equation each, making it all in total 2 equations. Now, when I require a 3 equation, but I'm getting 2 equations, I'm still short of 1 equation, which can never ever come from anywhere because I'm just given 2 conditions. So that means my number of variables are not matching with the number of equations here. And hence the answer would be E. Now, when I say the answer would be E, that means I'll still not checking the option or the condition number 1 and condition number 2 separately. I'm again saving my time checking those separately, and I'll directly combine them to make sure that they don't combine and be sufficient. And we know that when we mark answer E, we need to check C first. So we have already saved our time in not checking A and B. So let's take this particular question. If a store C in state X is selling a product A with its original retail price discounted twice, what is its original retail price? Now understand, when we say variable, we have been into practice of math since our childhood, taking the variable being X being unknown, or P being a number, 2 numbers X plus Y. Now, those look like a letter to us or letters to us, but over here, if you say if we stored C, now this C is not a variable, it's a name of a store. In state X, X is not a variable, it's a name of a state. In selling product A, so A is not a variable, it's a product name. So these 3 are not the variables. So don't get confused with, that in the variable approach, we have to see the variables. So this A, X, and C are the variables. No, we still yet have to see how many variables are there. So with its original retail price discounted twice, so its retail price has been discounted twice. So there are 2 discount percentage that has to be given on the original price. So there has to be some price on which there would be 2 more discount. So see, understand what I'm actually bringing your attention to. There is a price, say P, there is a discount percentage, maybe X%, and then the Y%. So there are already 3 variables right now to my mind. I know that these 3 variables can only be solved if there are 3 equations. That means my answer would be E. When I'm sure that my answer would be E, I either mark it, either I combine both the equations to solve the questions. So going ahead with this, let's see the first step, which says modify. So store C in state X sells product A, original price discounted twice. This was the condition given. Let the original retail price be assigned a variable, which is P. Always try assigning an initial letter. That becomes much easier. So for retail price, we have assigned as P. Discount percentage we have taken as X and Y. And we need to find P, which are original retail prices. We're dealing with 3 variables, P, X, Y. We need a 3 equation, which is a step number 2 right now. They're not matching up. The answer goes as E. So I'll quickly combine both the conditions. And look, I haven't read the condition yet. What is there in condition number 1 and 2, I'm not still read it yet. I'm just focused on the question, and I'm still knowing the answer for it. So going ahead with it, let's combine both the equation, condition 1 and together, and let's see what it says. So store C in state X sold product A with the first discount of 20%. First discount of 20%, that means X is 20%, because our X% is, we have taken it as the first discount. So that is a 20%. Then what about the Y? So see, this is wherein I'm asking you guys, when you know that answer is A, don't try checking your A and B separately. Discounting product A the second time. So after giving the second discount, which is Y, store C sold the product for 180. So 180 was the final price for which that particular product was sold after giving the second discount. So after giving your 20% discount and then the y% discount on P, you are getting 180. So this is how it has been written into the equation format. If anyone struggles to comprehend the particular question and express those into terms of equation, like in this particular question, how do I form the equation? Or if there is a percentage question, A is 20% greater than B, which is 30% lesser than C, or such kind of question, if you struggle to form an equation or mathematical expression out of the given statements, I'll say go on to Math Revolution, go on to the lesson, check lessons E, which is IV approach, therein where you'll find a lot of axioms and rules and concepts to form the mathematical expression. Coming back to the same question, P of 1 minus 20 over 100. Why 1 minus 20 over 100? Because I'm giving a discount of 20%. That means 80% I'm still charging. So P of 1 minus 20 over 100 times 1 minus y. I'm not sure about the second discount yet. That is equals to 180. Answer is pretty clear. There's no point of rearranging or simplifying this equation. Why? Because we have a P and a Y on the left hand side. There are two variables not known to us. So if we have a two variable left out, either P would be expressed in terms of Y or Y would be expressed in terms of P. But we cannot get the value of P after combining both. So my answer goes as E. So if someone is still solving this particular question, I'm already there on the fifth or sixth question because I know the variable approach. And so does you guys have started knowing it. So you guys have to be quick enough. Now let's go on to something very important, which is the case of answer D. So far, what we did that we were not checking the answers or separately checking the conditions like A and B because we were very much aware about the fact that it is C or E. Now, since we are dealing with the answer D case, we know that A and B has to be checked out. So what does it says? If your original condition has just got one variable, you will require one equation. Your both conditions will give you one equation each. So your answer goes as D because you're getting the one equation from both of the conditions. So now let's talk about this particular question. What is the volume of the cube which is shown on the right hand side in cubic inches? Now, when we deal with the volume of a cube, it's a cube which has all the sides equal. So if I'm known to the side, I can just cube it to get me the volume. So if I assume that this particular cube has a side, let's say A, or you could have any letter of your own choice, I just have to cube it. So A cube will give me the volume for it. So if the only question is, can I get the value of A? So now over here, if we talk about this particular question, this is only dealing in one variable because we just need to know the side length. So in that scenario, both the conditions will give me one equation each. So I'll just I'll apply the first step. I'll just modify and recheck the question. I'm assuming that the length of each side is A, so the volume would be A cube. Modification is done. Step one completed. Let's go on to step number 2. How many variables do I have? One, which is A. How many equation will I require? One. This one equation would come from what? From each conditions. So my answer would be D. So now if I go ahead and start with condition number 1, which says the surface area of cube is 216 square inches. Now surface area is nothing, it's a 6 times of area of each face. So I know that 6 times of A square would be equals to 216. After just dividing 216 by 6, I get A square equals to 36. So A happens to be plus minus 6 and length cannot be negative. So neglecting the negative 6, we take A equals to 6. Now this is what we required because A equals to 6 gives me a 6 cube, which is a volume of cube, that is 216. So my job is done. Similarly, for the length of the diagonal of the cube, which is the condition number 2, is 6 root 3. The length of a diagonal of a cube is a square root of A square plus A square plus A square, which happens to be square root of 3A square. A square can be taken out, so it becomes A root 3. Now this A root 3 is equals to 6 root 3. A square root of 3 can be cancelled from both the sides, so you're left out with A equals to 6, A cube equals to 216. Now, my purpose was not to let you solve this question. because I know you know how to solve this question. My purpose was, why am I focusing aloud on a equals to 6, a equals to 6? Because your condition number 1 and condition number 2 are giving me the same values. If that is the case, your answer would be always D. If your condition number 1 and condition number 2 gives you the same value, your answer would be D. This is the tip 1. Condition 1 equals to condition 2. Your most likely answer would be D, and it's a 95% times or plus applicable. So always, always, please remember that. Let's talk about this particular question. M and N are integers. How many integers do we have? 2. Is m plus n an odd integer? Now understand this particular question. So far we were dealing with a value based question. Now this question is asking about an operand question, which is. So my answer would be yes or no. So my first equation and the second equation, so I still know one thing, that my two integers, m plus n, they are the two integers. So I needed two equations to solve. If I need, how do I know if both the condition lead to the same answer without solving it? Okay, Marijana, in that particular class question, we solved that and then we got to know that the conditions have the same values. But there has been instances therein where they just provide you direct values in one of the condition, and one of the condition you solve. This particular question will answer your question right now. So just let's first talk about this particular question which is there on the screen. It will answer you the question indirectly or directly. Now see over here, what is happening is, now see, this is a trap. M equals to 2 and n equals to 1. This particular m and n, if I could get it, I can add up 2 plus 1, that is 3. It's an odd integer. The 2 looks to me as an answer. So B is satisfied directly without even thinking about it. So there has been instances where students have fall for such kind of answer and they have marked B without looking into it. But think about a GMAT perspective. If they have to give you such kind of a direct question, I mean, they're taking GMAT, right? So they deal into logics. They deal into visual imaginations that we perceive. And this is an integer question. Now, let me tell you one thing. Uh, that is one thing which I'm not covering in today's webinar, but there are certain traps and the key questions in which variable approach has a outcome in a different way. For example, if you feel like your answer is C, because you're dealing with two integers here, m plus n, and now you can see that the two integers or two variables will require two equations to solve, so my answer should be C. But if it's a key question, if it's an integers question, then if you're possibly marking your answer as C, stop yourself and mark your answer as A or B. This is common mistake type 1. This is available onto our website on the lesson, so you could directly check those. The common mistake type 2 is, if just looking at the question, if you feel like your answer would be A or B, mark your answer as D if it's a key question. So now when Yash asked me about how many days would it take to master this approach, if this was just on the fact of non-exceptions, it would be done into 7 days. But you can only master the variable approach when you have a hands-on the key questions understanding. So let's see over here that, we have m plus n equals to odd. This is what we have to find. Even if you say yes, it is an odd, that's an answer. Even if you say no, it's not an odd, that's an answer. But if you say sometimes it's an odd, sometimes it's an even, then that is not an answer. Now I have got two variables and I've got two equations. So my answer should be C. This is what I have guys told you in couple of slides before. So definitely I can choose the C as most likely answer to solve the question, but this is an integer question, so I have to be very well focused about it, and I have to take in consideration the condition number 1 and 2, wherein condition number 2 is very pretty to solve. So I'll quickly pick the condition number 2. I'll just put the values m equals to 2, n equals to 1, 2 plus 1 is 3, that's an odd. So now when condition number 2 is already sufficient, my answer cannot be C or E. Now I'm just dealing with A, B, and D. So now this is how it changes. The variable approach changes during the key question. So this is what you guys have to master. Going ahead with this, condition number 1, when it says 3 times m plus 7 times n is an odd, for m and n, I have got possibility of being odd and even once a time. So suppose if m and n both are odd, then 3 times m plus 7 times n would give me odd plus odd equals to even. So if m and n are even, then 3m plus 7n would gives me even plus even equals to even. So now understand what we are trying to do, that condition number 1 already says that 3m plus 7n has to be an odd. So if I keep m and n both as odd or both as even, my answer is getting even. So 3m plus 7n can be odd only when one of these is odd and another one of this is even. I repeat, when one of them is odd and another of them is even. And now if you quickly look into the condition number 2, which says m equals to 2, that means it's even, and n equals to 1, that means it's an odd. That means one of them is even and another one is odd. This is what my condition number 1 is asking for. So therein where we get to know that your likely answer is D, because both the condition number 1 and 2 are giving you the same information, that one of the variable has to be an odd and another has to be even. So I'll mark my answer as B. So this possibly answers the question of Marijana, that how would we get to know that the condition 1 and 2 can give us both answers similar to mark an answer D. So in this question, condition number 2 was pretty open condition. There was nothing to solve, but condition number 1 was all about getting the condition number 2 information as the same. All right, so now getting ahead with the case of answer A or B. So what happens with so it's very simple. We have a one variable, we require a one equation, and either of the equation will give us. So if condition number 1 gives me that equation to solve, but B doesn't, or 2 doesn't, then pretty simple, I'll mark my answer as A. If condition number 2 gives me the information, but not the condition number 1, then I'll mark my answer as B. So let's go ahead with this. When each condition alone is sufficient, we definitely mark our answer as D. But the next most likely answers are A or B when they are alone sufficient. Now, this is a particular question which we have right now. Is x less than 0? So is x a negative number indirectly? Now, we are just dealing with one of the variable, which is x. And to solve this, I should get the answers from either the first or the second. So my most possible answer is D. And when we are saying that my most possible answer is D, I'll quickly pick A and B to solve this. So my condition number 1 and condition number 2 is already given to me. So let's apply the first step, which says modifying and recheck. I don't need to modify it because it's just a simple inequality, which is x is less than 0. If I match the number of variables with number of equations, which is a step number 2 and 3 that we does, I have one variable, which is x, requires one equation. Condition number 1 and 2 will give me one equation each. My most likely correct answer is D. Now, I'll check each condition separately. Let's pick the condition number 1, but that seems to be cubical polynomial maybe, and that is wherein, it's been complicated. So let's check the condition number 2 first. Condition number 2 says x squared minus x minus 2 is less than 0. It's a quadratic inequality that we are talking about. So I'm just quickly talking about how do we solve a quadratic equation for the people who are being from a non-med background, or have to just start their preparation. X squared minus x minus 2. So I need two numbers whose product is minus 2, and they can add up to give me minus 1. So those numbers would be minus 2 and 1. So in that scenario, my two factors are x minus 2, x plus 1 is less than 0. After solving this particular two factors, x minus 2 times x plus 1 is less than 0, I can get the values as x equals to 2 and x equals to minus 1. So my x would lie between minus 1 to 2, exclusive. So now x is greater than minus 1, that is less than 2. This includes the positive numbers. So is x less than 0? We cannot get the unique answer for this. Because x is greater than negative 1, that doesn't mean x is positive. It can still be negative. So for some numbers, x would be less than 0. For some numbers, it would be greater than 0. So condition 2 is not sufficient. And herein, I can definitely mark my answer to be safe as condition number 1, that is A, because it's a cubical polynomial. But let's talk about it. X cubed plus x squared plus x plus 2 is equals to 0. Put 2 on the right hand side to make it negative 2. Take a x common out of the particular bracket. So you get x times x squared plus x plus 1 is equals to negative 2. Now x squared plus x plus 1 would always be greater than 0 because they're all positive. So x happens to be negative 2 over x squared plus x plus 1, which is positive. So negative over positive is negative. So x is less than 0. So this particular equation condition tells me that it's x is less than 0. I'm able to mark my answer as A. X is not positive, Deepak, in the condition number 1. Understand, it says x is equals to minus 2 over x squared plus x plus 1. X squared plus x plus 1 is always positive. So if you divide a negative number by positive, you will always end up getting a negative number. Minus 2 over 3, it's a negative. Minus 2 over 1, it's negative. That means my x is less than 0 because my numerator is negative. My denominator is positive, so my x would be less than 0. Condition 1 never says that x is positive. X squared plus x plus 1 is always positive. Which rule? This is not a kind of a rule. This is just a kind of a concept. For x, if you take it as a negative, its square would be always positive. And then you're taking the same x here. Think about x equals to minus 2. Minus 2 square would be 4. 4 minus 2 would be 2. 2 plus 1. And you're still adding plus 1. So it would be always a positive number. So if you could just take a tweak about 1 or 2 values, you can easily get it. X squared plus x plus 1 is greater than 0 always. Right? All right. So our answer goes as A. So let's move on to the. So there was one variable in the original condition and we required one equation to solve this. So our likely answer was D. But always focus upon A and B. And that is something you can never ever miss upon, because for marking the answer as D, you have to see the conditions separately. But yes, C and E can never ever be answer for this. So A is the most likely answer. Condition 2 was not sufficient enough. Let's go on to another question. What is X? So the question asks what is X, and we need a value in this. So there is nothing called a yes or a no, but there is a value to it. Condition number 1 and condition number 2 are given. We are dealing with one variable. So the variable approach says very simple that we need to mark our D as one variable question. We require one equation. Answer is D. Find out whether X is equal to 0. So let's solve about this. Each condition separately. X square is equals to 1. So there is a X who, when you square that, you get 1. So now there are possibilities of getting two values for X, which is plus 1 and minus 1. Because if you square a negative value, it always always give you the positive values. So square of 1 is also 1 and square of negative 1 is also 1. So I'm ending up getting two values for x, negative 1 and not n, or 1. So in this scenario, my condition 1 is insufficient because I need a unique value. That is what CMT2 suggests. Now, if we go ahead about condition number 2 to solve, now see, condition number 2 is complicated in comparison to condition number 1. Condition number 1 is not sufficient. You are dealing with x. You need a one variable and one equation to solve. So your correct answer would be B. So now see, this is wherein it happens. If your two conditions are easy to solve and you're getting answers from both, your answer automatically happens to be D. If either of those is complicated to solve and the easier one doesn't work out to be sufficient, your answer goes accordingly. So if we solve the question, condition number 2, which says x cube is equals to 2 minus x, bring in everything on the left hand side, put it across equals to 0. Your x cube plus x minus 2 is equals to 0. This can be further factorized as x minus 1, x squared plus x plus 2 is equals to 0. This is only possible when x is equals to 1, because x squared plus x plus 2 is always positive. So if this is always positive, how will the product of these two particular factors would be equal to 0 when x minus 1 is equals to 0? And if I say x minus 1 is equals to 0, that means x is equals to 1. So I've got my unique answer as condition from the condition number 2 alone. So that is sufficient. So we already had one equation and one variable to solve. If you're struggling to know how to factorize the particular equation, you can definitely check our algebraic expression lessons onto our website. But x cubed plus x minus 2 can easily be taken in terms of you can add up something and this and you can factorize. So if you put 1 here, x cubed plus x minus 2 equal to 0, just do a hit and trial, put 1, x equals to 1. That means this equation will become what? 1 plus 1 minus 2, 0. That means if you're putting x equals to 1 and this equation is giving you 0, that means x minus 1 is already a factor of it. When you get x minus 1 already a factor of it, you can divide this equation by x minus 1 to get the another factor, which is x squared plus x plus 2. Going ahead with the same, one variable requires one equation, can get from both, mark answer D. If not from both, then either A or B could be an answer depending upon which condition goes sufficient, but C and E will never be an answer. This is very interesting. If you guys want to take the picture of it, you can definitely, I'll hold this for 30 seconds while talking about it. So if your number of equation needed is just one and you are dealing with one variable, or two variable and one equation, or three variable and two equations, so the difference between the number of variables and equation is one, then your most possible answer is D, which is up to 60%, and A and B falls for 19%. If you're requiring two equations and you've got two variables, or three variables and one equation, or four variables and two equation, your most possible answer is C. Don't check A, B, directly combine, mark your answer as C. If it doesn't work, 25% your answer would be E. If you require three equations, if you've got three variables, so maybe four variable and one equation, so five variable and two equation, most of the time your answer goes as E. And when you start practicing and learning the variable approach, after a week's time, just reading out the question, you will get to know that what is your possible answer, what is your most likely answer to it, especially in the question set which deals with the standard deviation and range, inequalities, absolute values, speed, distance, time, and number properties. So If I'm telling it to you, definitely you should log on to www.mathrevolution.com, check out the lessons, and start learning. So once we modify the original condition, we can solve approximately 30% of DS questions. So always try modifying before jumping to solve. And solving a question should be your last stage. When you got nothing to do in this world, then solve it and get to the answer. Before it, try applying everything. Like step number one, modify and recheck. Second, variable approach. You'll get your answers in the initial stages only. So from condition one and two, if one of the condition, if you could read this, if one of the condition is given by numbers and the other is given by ratio is like in terms of percentages or fractions, then the ratio wins over the numbers. So if your condition number one is numbers, condition number two is dealing with ratios, like a percentage or maybe the probability or maybe the fractions, then your condition number two would be sufficient, not condition number one. And in this scenario, what happens is you mark your answer, or you could directly mark your answers as, condition number two, answer B. And these are the tips that you will learn into once you get onto our websites. I mean, it is pretty difficult for me to cover up, every those spatial tips while dealing in the webinar. So I've just dealt with the basic approach of the variable approach. How does it save time, how accurate it is, and how it brings the accuracy. For more informations, I seriously recommend you to start learning the variable approach and applying it. It's not only about learning, it's all about the application. So I'm pretty sure that most of you would, and every one of you would have definitely loved this particular approach. And see, just 40 minutes is not just good enough to master it. But in 40 minutes, I was able to give you understanding that this approach works and how quicker it works and accurate it works, right? I understand that the GMAT questions are more logical, but the best part is variable approach is applicable from the level 35 till 51. So you don't have to worry about it. The only thing which you need to remember about is the basics of variable approach in the various cases of answer C, E, D, A, and B. Some tips which I have spoken about. What happens if that happens to be a key questions? How does that variable approach changes? So if you feel like answer is C, mark A or B. If you feel like answer is A or B, mark answer D. So these are the tips that you need to be very much following about. And third is modifying. So you modify the question and you automatically get to mark your answer as A or B. So they're in where, but don't solve it. Just mark your answer and choose the most likely answer. That would definitely work upon. And you can often reach out to us, marking your email on info@mathrevolution.com. You can write your queries to me directly on my email, which is my name, Puneet, Punit, at mathrevolution.com. And if you feel like talking to me about your quant preparations, where do you start from? If you have to discuss about your latest score or anything about it, you can directly connect with me on one-on-one call, and the dates and the hours would be soon updated on the Calendly. So after this webinar, so you would have those links onto GMAT Club. You can schedule your call on there. Also, you can schedule your call from one of the tab onto our website. And I'll be back on Tuesday from the GMAT Club webinar, which is basically I'll be talking about in details about how to prepare for GMAT Quant for the non-math background students. So I would recommend and would definitely be, will appreciate if most of you join it. Next Sunday, we are going to have a webinar on one of the most important topic, which is geometry. So keep intact and keep learning. This is what I want to suggest. And these are the highlights of our various courses that we are proud that we have, under our belt. So you could go with the solution pack for the variable. So it can be learned onto it. You can have a trial pack that is for 7 days, and you have 100 hours video lessons. You have 27 topics, 490 subtopics, 1500 practice questions, and a diagnostic test, of course. And this diagnostic is way different than what a normal mock test or diagnostic other sites have. It gives you a detailed analysis of every single question, and it often comes to me. So most of the students often, discuss their diagnostic score also with me. And then you guys can definitely have the comprehensive study guide for you. If you request for that, that how should you plan your studies, how should your approach be to study, because everything has to be well aligned and disciplined if you want to crack it through Q50 and 51. So these are some, add-ons. You can go for a shortcut 1 month. So if your exams are very near and you're already scoring Q47, 48, 47, 48, or 45 maybe into your mocks, but is still struggling to get through 50, 51, $69 is not that high for Q50, 51 score, let me tell you. So you can definitely take those. If you want to look for all-in-one package and you're about to begin your studies, you still have 3 months, you have a GMAT beginner, or you could start your package anywhere from 139 to 199. 199 is a VIP package, including everything. You get an official guide, you get a GMAT club free test, you get a daily quiz, a lot of practice questions, and everything. And if you're personally looking for someone to tutor you, we have two tutors. You will get that information on this, on the Math Revolution designated website. And yeah, I mean, like we always get at the good quality. So this is what. Uh, 7 day money back guarantee, but again, never ever get into a position to give a refund kind of case. So that is okay. Highest score guarantee of a plus 5 pointers, and just register yourself for the Math Revolution to get all your free resources, especially the variable approach. So at least for the variable approach, you should definitely register on it. Don't give up math. So after today's webinar, no one will give the math, definitely for sure, because you have got something now to save your time and score. And you can never ever be satisfied with 30s and mid 40s, definitely. And yeah, these are the two emails. You can always write us back, and we are appreciating your response. And our team and I would be personally looking forward to answer as many as emails that we get. Info at mathrevolution.com for any kind of inquiries. Puneet at mathrevolution.com on any kind of inquiries. So I'm really glad to, support your DSS scores and especially the GMAT Quantity scores by taking the roundaway webinars. Keep intact, keep in touch, and this would be uploaded soon onto the YouTube, so you can often check those if you have missed on something. And yeah, so I appreciate your patience, and yes, it will be directly there onto the YouTube. So once we have done with the the webinar today, it would be uploaded in a day. So just give it 24 hours and it would be there on the YouTube channel of Math Revolution. You can directly go and check it out, right? So if anything you haven't, you can directly write us back. With the same thought, stay blessed, stay safe, practice, and yeah, thank you so much for you listening to us. Have a great day. Thank you and bye bye.